Good evening, everybody. This is Kiana Canada, and tonight we have a lot to talk about. But before we get into the topics, as you've seen with the thumbnail, before we start talking about that, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. So when you like this video, when you share it, what it does is it tells the algorithm that this video is important. It also uh, pushes that video up in the algorithm. Um, but we must be reminded that just because the video is not being pushed up in the algorithm does not mean that it's important. So your likes and your shares are appreciated. If you subscribe to this channel, it is always appreciated. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get into today's topic. And as you know from reading the thumbnail, today's topic is vigilante violence in the United States of America. Now, to reiterate, there is a lot to discuss tonight, and I'm going to do my best to kind of go over everything. For the last couple of days, I've been feeling kind of wheezy because there was an event here at Queen's University, and there was some food that was served. So a couple of days ago, I think they served some prosciutto ham here in the graduate school. And I ate that, and I believe that ham went bad. And so for the last couple of days, my stomach has been feeling kind of woozy, and I've been feeling kind of sick in the stomach. So I guess this is a, you know, I think what I need to do now, ladies and gentlemen, is just be very careful about the meats that I eat. I've been very careful about eating certain types of meats because sometimes meats can cause me to feel very sick. And so this is one that I think I need to be very careful about eating. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the discussion. It looks like I'm far away, so let me go ahead and move up some. Hopefully that looks better. Let's see. Okay. Let's go ahead and get into today's topic. As you know, that there was a man that was arrested named Luigi Mangione. And if you have been following the headlines, you have seen that Luigi Mangione was thought to be the perpetrator in the United Healthcare shooting in the United States of America in New York. Now, there is some speculation, or I'm not going to say speculation, but there's supposition that's going around across social media that this is not the person who unalived the United Healthcare CEO, that is Brian Thompson. And so let's get into that. First, in my personal opinion, Luigi doesn't look anything like the image that we see, the first image that we've seen circulating on across news stations and on social media. And so when you look at those two images, like the face is shaped quite differently. The suspect in the original image, or yeah, so in that original image, his face looks a little bit longer, so it's elongated than Luigi's face, and the nose is quite different as well. So Luigi, his nose is kind of upturned, whereas the suspect's nose is not upturned. The only similarity that these two suspects have in common are the eyebrows. The eyebrows are uncanny. They look the same. But I think if it hadn't been for that, perhaps this is maybe an indication that they have the wrong man. There's other evidence that points to that this is possibly the wrong suspect. So let's go ahead and get into that. So when Luigi was arrested, he pleaded not guilty. This is markedly different, or just this is at odds with what we are this is at odds with the suspect's manifesto. So, of course, when we are looking at that manifesto is saying one thing, and then Luigi is saying something totally different. Now, could it be that he never thought that he would get caught? And when he did, that was quite surprising. That's, well, yeah, that's within the realm of possibility. But again, first, Luigi pled not guilty to this offense. That's one. Two, he said that there was an injustice. I think I'm paraphrasing his words, but when he was arrested and he was being taken into custody, or actually he was already in custody, but I think he was being taken into the prison, he yelled out, "This is something on the intelligence of the American people. This is an injustice." And what I got from that is maybe that Luigi was trying to tell us, like, okay, he's trying to tell us that he's not the person that actually committed this shooting, and American people should be intelligent enough to understand that. And so that's the second thing. Of course, again, when you look at that manifesto is quite whoever wrote that manifesto, they seem to be quite confident and indefatigable in their reasoning for uh, doing what they did. And there just seems to be a contradiction. And so is Luigi Mangione, is he the real suspect, is the question, right? Because to reiterate, and going back to this, because I think it's important, is that one, he is pleading not guilty. That's one. Two, he shouts out that this is playing on the intelligence, or the American people. They're intelligent enough not to fall for this. Two, three is that Luigi Mangione, when he was being arraigned, he said that, so law enforcement stated that what they found on him was some foreign currency, and then a device that kept his phone from being tracked. Now, Luigi Mangione, he testified, or gave evidence that foreign currency wasn't his. And then two, he said that that this device that kept his phone from being tracked is not his as well. He said that these items are planted. Now, it could have been that law enforcement officers planted these items onto Luigi to actually have his bail denied, because for instance, Luigi is a very wealthy person. He comes from money. His family has a lot of money. He has a lot of influence. So it's easy for him to get out of prison, right? Or get out of jail. So he would make bail very easily. But what I think is happening here, ladies and gentlemen, is that those items could have been planted onto Luigi to stop him from being able to make bail. And we know that when a person makes bail, that they are more likely to not do any jail time, because of course when we are going off of heuristics, right? And so heuristically, when we see a person in a suit, or they're out in public, or they're out, walking around, that is telling us, it's a shorthand that is telling us, excuse me, it's a shortcut to us in our mental processing, that that person is really not guilty. If he's guilty, they would have him locked up behind bars. And so heuristically, like when we're taking these mental shortcuts, we see that uh, in the case of Daniel Penny, that he was actually walking around and not actually excuse me, an orange uniform that they put people who are in jail in. And so we didn't see Daniel Penny in a uniform like that, right? And so all the videos and the images and the everything on social media that we saw of Daniel Penny was Daniel Penny wearing street clothes. Whereas, of course, now we're looking at Luigi Mangione, and he is in a orange uniform, which is heuristically telling us that this could possibly be the suspect. However, there's some caveats here, and those caveats is as we are witnessing on social media, there's a halo effect in this case as well. One, Luigi is people are thirsting after Luigi. They believe that he is a very attractive um, Italian guy. That's one thing. And then two, he is very intelligent. So he went to, I believe, like a private school. He got a master's. He got a bachelor's in engineering. He got a master's in engineering as well. And so he has some accolades behind him. Uh, he's physically fit like Daniel Penny was. So when we saw Daniel Penny, there were images of Daniel Penny circulating on the internet of a ripped stomach with no shirt on. Same thing with Luigi Mangione. There's images circulating on the internet about him as well with no shirt on and a ripped stomach. And men and women are thirsting over this suspect as well. So it raises the question, right? Is this going to be a pattern in the United States where universally attractive people get away with the M word? And so let's go into that. But before we do, let me just go ahead and wrap up the Luigi Mangione situation. I think that Luigi Mangione's situation is quite different from all these other cases that I'm about to speak about. And in the sense that Luigi Mangione does not have any affiliation to any military or any United States government, whether that's the military, whether that's the Marines, whether that's the Air Force. He seems to be there's nothing tying him to that. That's one. Two, there seems to be a, a medical condition that Luigi Mangione has. So that medical condition is, I guess, being used as motive to tie him to this horrific attack. And so this is quite different from all of the other cases that I'm going to be talking about. Now, going into these cases, so I'm just going to carefully flow into these other cases with saying this is that when we were going through the Daniel Penny case, the far right was telling us that Daniel Penny was a hero, that he was this savior, that he was exactly what a good Samaritan, exactly what America needed, right? Someone like that who could actually be on the train or be in New York or be in public. He was a New York Superman, being in public whenever there was somebody getting out of line. The statement that was circulating is that America needs a Daniel Penny. Yet, in the situation with Luigi Mangione, there is a double standard and hypocrisy with their coverage and their positioning with these two cases. So Again, Daniel Penny, the far right is saying hero, the far right is saying Good Samaritan. With Luigi Mangione, the far right is saying criminal. When we put these two cases side by side, we see that both one person, which was Daniel Penny, did unalive a man on a subway who was not being violent. Now, I need to issue a disclaimer. I in no way condone the violence that Jordan Neely did in the past. I no way condone that. And I no way absolve Jordan Neely of that history if he is truly guilty of it. But what I think is unfair is that the day in question, Jordan Neely wasn't physically assaulting anyone. Was he combative? Yes. Was he loud? Yes. Was he um, throwing paper? Yes, he was. But he didn't touch anyone. He didn't put his hands on anyone. And ladies and gentlemen, this case with Daniel Penny sets a dangerous precedent that now anything that you say in your moment of frustration, in your moment of weakness, in your moment of anxiety, that could be used to unalive you in the United States. Just think about what Jordan Neely said. He said, like, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm ready to, A, B, C, and D. And now that could be looked at as, okay, this is justification for the unalivement of bodies in public space. Just think about it. You were out on the street and you are frustrated about something. Let's say, for instance, you go into a McDonald's and maybe you pay for something and they don't actually give you your correct order. And you have to wait a very long time, and you're waiting a long time, but you have to get back to work. Like your break isn't that long. Some places in the United States, your break is only 30 minutes. And so in this particular situation, you have to get back, right, to work, and they're taking a long time. And then you get frustrated and you say something that you really don't mean, but you said it out of a moment of frustration. And then now you have a Marine that is in the McDonald's who hears you say that. And then they walk up behind you, put you in a chokehold, and take you down. And now you're no longer living because of that moment of frustration that we all have, that we all go through, which is not really connected to a mental breakdown. Now, listen, did Jordan Neely, was he unhoused? Did he have a mental health condition? Yes. That is not to be disputed. But what we are doing, ladies and gentlemen, with this case with Daniel Penny does is it criminalizes human emotion. It criminalizes human frustration. Now, in a few videos, in the videos that I posted in the past, I remain the same. God gave us these emotions so that we could exercise them, so we could feel like we feel love, we feel sadness, we feel guilt, we feel shame, we feel uh, joy, we feel anger. These are all human emotions that uh, we have, that God gave us. And so the criminalization of expressing your human emotion at the wrong time is a dangerous precedent. Now, peeling back the layers even further, we're looking at Daniel Penny's background, Jordan Neely's background. And even if Jordan Neely didn't have this criminal history attached to him, right, ladies and gentlemen, even if that wasn't the case, even if he just only had mental health condition attached to him, Daniel Penny still would have walked out of that jury with a not guilty verdict. And so merging into the far right or the Republicans don't agree that this case is quite similar. The Luigi Mangione case is quite similar to the Daniel Penny case. Okay, let's do the comparison. You had two vigilantes that took the law into their own hands. Two claimed that there was a person or a system that was harming or about to harm people. In Daniel Penny's case, Daniel Penny believed that Jordan Neely was about to harm the subway goers on the subway. And then you had this suspect in the Brian Thompson case who feels strongly that Brian Thompson already harmed a lot of Americans, that Brian Thompson cut the or challenge the claims of Americans who were suffering and trying to get insurance for a health condition. And so the suspect in the the suspect in the Brian Thompson case has argued that this is probably going to be a continuation. So you have two suspects, you have two vigilantes that unalived two people that they felt were doing harm or about to do harm to the public. And yet one is looked at as a hero and the other one is not. So the right looks at Daniel Penny as a hero, but they don't look at the suspect in the Brian Thompson case as a hero. Do you see the contradiction here with the right? Either you are for the right to life or you're not. And so in my position, I feel like the right to life is supposed to be upheld. It is one of the inviolable rights that we have. It's a very important right. And I don't think that it should be taken extrajudicially or arbitrarily by a vigilante on the street or by law enforcement officers who can't control their emotions. And so we see a disconnect and we see that there is a we we see that there is a contradiction. And ladies and gentlemen, in one of my classes that I'm taking, as you know, I'm doing a master's in international human rights law. And one of the classes that I'm taking, I'm talking about hypocrisy and double standards and contradictions and inconsistency. And what we see in this case here, that there is an inconsistency in the way that people are judging these two cases. Okay, so why is it that it's different in the Brian Thompson case, but or why, to reiterate, why is it that the suspect in Brian Thompson's case is not, and this is just for reflection, this is not the way that I feel, it's for reflection and conversation. Why is the suspect in the Brian Thompson case not a hero, but the suspect in the Jordan Neely case is a hero? And so what I think, this is just my personal opinion, is I think that when there is a taking of a Black life, and this is apart from the Luigi Mangione case, because we understand that Luigi Mangione could possibly not be the suspect, right? There's just so many contradictions. First, the face looks different, the smile looks different, the the his reaction to the arrest seems quite different from what's in the manifesto. The person who wrote the manifesto, eh, you would think that if they got caught, that they would feel comfortable with being caught because that's what they want, because they want to be able to prove themselves about what they did. And this is what I'm not seeing with Luigi Mangione. Like when he was arrested, unfortunately, like he wet himself out of fear. And so maybe he thought, okay, well, they think that, like maybe he thinks, maybe his line of thinking during that time was like, oh my God, they really believe that he's the suspect. Maybe that's what he thought, right? And so I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. I need to be convinced more at this moment. So if I'm on a scale of 100, 50% thinking that Luigi Mangione is a suspect, 50% thinking that he's not the suspect, my scale is probably going to be like 60% or even 70%. I'm 70% thinking that Luigi Mangione is not the suspect until there is something else that is tying him to the crime. Something else that's tying him to the crime. Like to reiterate, the person who in the original photos that were released, it doesn't look anything like Luigi. So the only thing that looks similar are the eyebrows. And that brings me to what I really want to talk about tonight. And tonight I want to talk about a pattern and a practice of vigilantes in the United States taking the law into their own hands, either being pardoned or either getting off with a jury, and some of the connections that they had to the United States. So we remember Jeffrey Dahmer. Do you remember Jeffrey Dahmer? He was a a serial killer. He killed a number of homosexual men, and if you remember, there was one case. I believe the suspect was Cornerac synthesumphone, Cornerac synthesumphone, which was an Asian male who was, I believe, he was not of age. And I remember when I was watching a Netflix special on Jeffrey Dahmer, it showed that what happened was that Glenda Cleveland reported that Jeffrey Dahmer had this, um, this victim in his home. And so when this victim or actually this victim was out on the street, so Glenda Cleveland reported, "Hey, there's this victim that was running around on the street. I think he's coming from Jeffrey Dahmer's house." And so when she reported it to law enforcement came, and then Jeffrey Dahmer said, "Hey, this is my boyfriend. We're getting into a fight." And law enforcement, despite this young boy not being of age, law enforcement allowed Jeffrey Dahmer to take this child back into the house with him. And so there's something I'm really thinking about on that note, and I'll probably cover that in another video. I haven't quite formulated and brought it all together so that it can sound coherent and make sense. So I'm not going to talk about that tonight, but I'll talk about that later in another video. So we have Jeffrey Dahmer, and Jeffrey Dahmer was in the United States Army. And so we know that with Jeffrey Dahmer, he got away with tons of killings for a very long time. For a very long time. Like there was a couple of times, more than once, where he should have been caught and law enforcement didn't take action. And then, ladies and gentlemen, uh, we have Kyle Rittenhouse. And we know that Kyle Rittenhouse, he unalived Joseph Rosenbaum and Anthony Huber. These were two protesters, Black Lives Matter protesters. And so Rittenhouse showed up at a protest, and of course, we know that Rittenhouse is on the right. And he showed up at a protest, and he said in some social media posts that he was looking to do something, is what the allegations are. And so when he arrived at the protest, there was a scuffle, and there a lot went on. But what we know is that there were two suspects. Excuse me. There were two Black Lives Matter protesters who were unalived at this protest. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what's similar to the Rittenhouse case, to the Daniel Penny case, is in the Rittenhouse case, the judge threw out the number one charge that tied Kyle Rittenhouse to all the crimes. So that was in possession unlawfully of a weapon. And so the judge threw that charge out. Once the judge threw that charge out, that case fell apart. The same thing that happened in the Daniel Penny case. The judge threw out the manslaughter charge. I believe it was a manslaughter charge that the judge threw out. And once the judge threw that charge out, I knew that case was going to fall apart because, of course, there was precedent already in the Kyle Rittenhouse case that when you throw out the charge that is actually linking the defendant to all the crimes, when you throw out that first charge at the top, all those other charges are going to fall apart. And so this is something that's actually really this is something that's present in a lot of criminal law cases. And so there is this very top serious charge, right? And this is the charge that if the defendant is not guilty of this very serious charge, then they are likely not guilty of all these other charges in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the jury. And so with the Kyle Rittenhouse case, that's what happened, that the very serious charge, which was unlawfully being in possession of this firearm, that the judge threw that out. And then once the judge dismissed that charge, then all those other charges fell flat. Same thing in the Daniel Penny case. And so Daniel Penny, so we have Kyle Rittenhouse, who applied for, who has a connection to the United States Marine Corps. Although Kyle Rittenhouse was not accepted, he did apply, and then he did have some connections with the Marine Corps. And I think if you remember, there were a lot of images of Kyle Rittenhouse in Army fatigues. And so Kyle Rittenhouse, United States Marine Corps. And Daniel Penny, United States Marine Corps. Then we have Daniel Perry. If you remember, Daniel Perry also killed a Black Lives Matter protester, which was Garrett Foster. Garrett Foster was a white male. He had a Black girlfriend. He was also an Army veteran. He was in the United States Air Force. But I don't think that Daniel Perry knew that. All he saw was this body coming up to him from the Black Lives Matter protesters, and he was probably that influenced by that, right? And so the evidence shows that when Perry walked up to, excuse me, when Foster walked up to Perry and asked him really to stop because the protesters were proceeding across traffic, and Perry was armed, but excuse me, I'm sorry, Foster was armed, but not pointing his firearm at anyone. He walked up to Perry while Perry was in his vehicle and asked Perry, "This is a protest. Can you please stop so this protest can proceed?" And from that point, Perry believed that he allegedly that he was in danger, and what he did was he unalived Foster. And although Perry did receive jail time, he was found guilty. He was pardoned by Greg Abbott. So it was as if he, didn't receive any jail time at all. So what is that connection? So we know that. So we have Kyle Rittenhouse, United States Marine Corps. We have Daniel Perry, who is also a United States Army sergeant. We have Daniel Penny, who is, what was he? United States Marine Corps as well. You had Jeffery Dahmer, who was in the United States Army. All these men, what they have in common, ladies and gentlemen, is that all of these men either was killed a minority or they killed someone who had allegiance to minorities. So in the Rittenhouse, in the Daniel Perry case, Daniel Perry and Kyle Rittenhouse killed Black Lives Matter protesters. So these white protesters, so Foster was a white protester who had a Black girlfriend who was in allegiance with the Black Lives Matter protesters. You had Joseph Rosenbaum and Anthony Huber, who was outside of protesting the unalivement of a Black man. So there was some allegiance there to the Black Lives Matter protest. And then with Daniel Penny, he killed a Black man on a New York subway. You had Jeffrey Dahmer, who killed a number of Black homosexual men. Now, he also, his victims weren't only homosexual men. Like, I think a couple of his victims were white men at first. But after that, like, I want to say 98% of his victims were Black men. And again, I'm not actually adding the Luigi Mangione case to this because I don't think that his profile is falling in line with what I'm seeing with these other cases, this pattern in the practice. But it appears that there is a eerie connection between these men and the United States government. So the United States Marine Corps, the United States Army, the United States, what else was there? Yeah. So United States Army, United States Marine Corps. Something in military. All of these killers have a military background or military connection. If you think about that, ladies and gentlemen, it becomes quite clear. So all of these men have a either a military background or connected to the military in some way. And all of them have either been pardoned or have got away with the M word at a trial by jury. I want you to think about this for a moment and to really reflect on it and ask yourself if this is the United States way of taking people out that it believes is an affliction to society, or let me rephrase that, a menace to society. Is this the United States' way of contracting someone to take out minorities without actually getting its hands dirty? When I discovered that Daniel Penny was a Marine, I knew that he was going to be found not guilty because of his connection to the United States government. Ladies and gentlemen, my hypothesis is that the United States may be connected to some of these cases. This is not a conspiracy. I just gave you the evidence. My hypothesis is that probably behind the scenes, the United States helped these men get off. We already know that the United States helped Daniel Perry get off because Greg Abbott pardoned him. So that was out in the open. These other cases are not so clear. In the Kyle Rittenhouse, we had the judge who actually, what did that judge do? That judge dropped that most serious charge. Let's see, hold on. Ladies and gentlemen, let's see. So the judge in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, his name is Bruce Schroeder, and there's not a lot online about this judge. Let's see. I'll have to probably look into this later. I'll probably have to look into it later, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm willing to bet you that these judges are connected in some way to military officials. Bruce Schroeder, the judge in the Daniel Penny case, who actually threw out that very top charge as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I am willing to bet you that there is some connection to someone in the alphabet agencies or the military, and this is how these men are getting off. Now, these cases seem to be quite different from the Luigi Mangione case, because with Luigi Mangione is obviously it doesn't have the same connections or backgrounds as these other vigilantes. So with these other vigilantes, Luigi Mangione, he has a medical condition and no ties, as I seen, to the military or to any government officials, despite being very wealthy and coming from a very affluent family. This is going to take some time to actually research and look into. I'm going to be doing my research and looking deeply into these cases, and really trying to evaluate whether or not there is a real connection to the United States in all of these cases. And if there is a connection, then we can surely attribute these crimes to the state. Um, Got to look into it, and that's going to be something that I'm going to be doing. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I will probably be on here next week and speaking about giving a follow up on this Luigi Mangione case. There is a lot of other cases and things that are going on in the media uh, that is worth going over, and I might cover that as well. Um, Let me know if there's something that you want me to really talk about and go over, and that is something that will definitely consider. And before I go, again, I want to remind you that this is a kind of less than a year, I believe almost a year, this YouTube channel. And so I want to urge you to subscribe to it and actually to give me your thoughts and your opinions. Also, I have a Facebook account that is linked to this account. So you can see the link of my Facebook account to this account. For some reason, Google is not putting up my Facebook account to my knowledge panel. And some reason there is probably this state is uploading inaccurate information to my knowledge panel. So recently I seen like an old YouTube channel that I'm not uploading anything on, that's being uploaded to my knowledge panel instead, in lieu of my actual YouTube channel, which is this one. And then I'm seeing uh, I guess posts and pages from my website, which is no longer active, being uploaded to my knowledge panel. So I had asked Google, can you please remove that, because that information is outdated and it's old. So we'll see if Google actually responds to that request. If Google doesn't respond to that request, then I know that that is something that I need to look further into. Okay, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We will talk to you next time. Bye bye.